Estate planning mistakes that could cost your wife or your children big time, or your husband, frankly. It's a big deal. Great article in today's Wall Street Journal. The Brady Bunch breaks down. Estate fight tears step families apart. I'm going to talk about this. So in a normal estate, basically, what we call these I love you wills. So we get all caught up in here, man. Oh yeah, if you're wondering why I'm not so presentable, I just got off the Basel court smoking my youngest kid. I had lost 3 straight, but this time I hit a freaking Pistol Pete 3, a Luca 3 from the freaking paint, from the logo, and I won 21, and then I was out there in the yard pruning my tomato plants, and then watering my, I use a mitt-ladder gardening method, so you got a weekly feed, you got to water it in. Looks like we might be getting some rain, but if we don't, you don't want to just put the fertilizer in there. Oh no, not synthetic fertilizer, you're not organic. No, because I'm not dumb. So what you do is you use a synthetic fertilizer, mitt-ladder gardener, you got to water that sucker in every single week though. And it was a little bit hot, so I was out there pruning, and man, I tell you, my plum and my pear trees are looking good. My peaches are still there, though, so far. All right, so what happens is you got Josh, and then you got Charlotte, and you got the kids. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so typically I'll die first. Boink. I leave everything to her, and then everything goes 25% each. That's typically how a typical estate plan works. Again, we call these I love you wills. I leave everything to my honey bun. I am getting caught up in this thing. It's really get on my nerves. And then when she dies, she leaves everything to the kids, whatever, a proportion, however you choose fit. You know, if you have a special needs kid, we don't want him to get the money because he'll lose government benefits and whatnot, but you have to figure that out with an attorney in that regard, for sure. I'm all tied up in here. All right, but let's check this out, though. This is crazy. Barbara and James Kurtz, and this, by the way, when I deal with clients, I always say, I know it makes them uncomfortable, but I always ask, is this your first marriage? All right. Is there an issue with a forlorn ex-spouse? Is there an issue with kids from previous marriages? Is there an issue with your daughter's married to some scumbag? Maybe a guy who likes the New York Yankees, and or maybe a guy who's related to Dr. Fauci or something like that. Is there related where there could be some bad things happening upon your demise? I always ask about the parents too, by the way. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not expecting an inheritance, man. We're not talking about inheritance. We're talking about who's to take care of mom and dad if they get sick, if financially, if not physically. When that's usually resolved, which usually it is pretty easily, then you've got to say, who are the kids? Because remember, we're trying to protect your estate from in-laws and outlaws, creditors and predators. All right, that's what we're trying to do here. And I learned that from Dave Tedesco. Was it him? Yeah, USA, R.I.P. Dave. A very ornery guy who loved his whole life insurance, but man, one of the smartest estate planners I've ever met. With this other guy named Chris Borzik. That guy just crushed. Again, Chris was another kind of odd guy, but he just one of the, we had 3 of the best estate planners I've ever seen in my life at USA. None were attorneys. They used to go down this thing, heckling in the University of Miami down there in Florida every year, and just freaking, they come back and just blow your mind away. You're like, damn. We get on these joint calls. I bring Chris Borzik on there, Paul, a guy named Paul, I forgot his last name, and Dave Tedesco. And these guys are just, I don't know what any of these guys are doing now because USA folded up shop, sad. Man, these guys just crushed. Anyway, so what we do, so if you ever come across these gentlemen from USA, say, hey, my hat's off to you because you guys freaking crushed. Yeah, I learned everything I did from following these guys. That's for damn sure. All right, so what happens here, though? Let's say you got Josh and Charlotte has her 2 kids. I'm not doing it right. All right. So kid 1 and kid 2, and Josh has his 3 kids. We'll just say 1, kid 2, kid 3. Now, what happens when I die and I leave everything to Charlotte? Well, Charlotte can say, and just leave everything there. She can say, screw my kids, leave everything there. And she has a complete right to do so. And here's an example of what happened here. And I've seen it. Barbara and James Kurtz established a joint trust in 1995 to provide their children, this is a second marriage, by the way, with equal shares that remained in the trust when the second parent died. But according to a lawsuit filed by Barbara's children, all right, so this would be Barbara in this case right here. Actually, I got to make it bigger, don't I? So this is Barbara's kids because they're being disenfranchised or disinherited. But according to a lawsuit filed by Barbara's children after Barbara died in 2010, James effectively moved all the assets in the new trust and named his only son as a beneficiary. When James died in 2020, Barbara's children were told they were not the beneficiaries, and their lawsuit argued that the assets should be clawed back and distributed on the terms of the joint trust. Last year, The Court of Appeals ruled that James wasn't entitled to withdraw all the assets from the original trust after their mother's death. And that makes sense, because I imagine the mother was also, when this is Barbara, right? This is James, right? Actually, this is Barbara who died first, James right there. But what would happen is Josh, in this case, is bringing some of the assets into our joint accounts, if that makes sense. And so you have to say, well, when they got married, Josh already had his own assets that he brought in. Thus, those own assets should go a portion to Josh's children, even though Charlotte, in this case, denied Josh's children the right to have access to those. So that's a court operation here. It kind of makes sense because you're bringing individually owned assets into a relationship, combining them into trust. But it's legal stuff. Who wants to go through that, dude? You want your kids to go through that? Hell no. Let's see. There's going to be a trial. The risk of such an error is going to be reduced with better planning, 100%. Using separate trusts outside the main estate plan, or what I would suggest in a lot of ways. And this is where it gets tough. And again, I'm not an attorney, so don't listen to me. Don't listen to your buddy Josh. I haven't showered today yet, but I think a lot of times what would be the best way to go would be Josh, Charlotte. We have kid 1, kid 2, kid 3, kid 1, kid 2. Is you basically have your joint assets, but then your individual assets just go directly to your kids at death, if that makes sense. So when I die, it doesn't go to Charlotte. It just goes to my 2 kids. When she dies, it goes to her individual assets, 401ks, IRAs, and things of that nature. Your joint assets, like a house, you got both people on the deed. Well, you don't want Charlotte. You don't want that to go to your kids because then Charlotte could be literally kicked out. We don't want that. So we want her to be able to stay in the house. And they have these life estates and all this stuff too. But second marriages can be a bear, dude. I'm telling you. But even first marriages, man. I mean, when it comes to dividing up estates, kids will fight over anything. Actually, like this strategy even better. Another option is give the kids the money while you're alive, or leaving them a specific dollar amount or percentage in the estate upon your death. Always got to be careful about leaving a specific percentage or a dollar. You just got to be careful because things change. So if you say I'm going to leave my kid 25% of my estate, and you just got to be careful on that because 25% today might seem a whole lot different. 25% 20 years from now, 10 years from now, or something like that. A specific dollar amount, 50,000 might seem like a lot today, but might seem like chump change 50 years from now, whatever. You just got to be careful. You just got to update your estate plans. I cannot stress this enough. And while a lot of times LegalZoom.com is fine, if you have a complex estate, second marriages, properties in two different county jurisdictions and whatnot. If you're going to be domiciled 6 months out of the year plus 1 day in Florida, 5 months out of the year, 30 days in Massachusetts, this is stuff you need an estate planning attorney for. There's just no 2 ways around that. You got to get it done, man. Let's keep going. When Helen Pickle, a retired teacher and widowed mother of 2, and Tom Norman, an estate planner and divorced father of 3, got married, they wanted their separate property. So that's what I was talking about, separate property. This is what this would be. That's exactly what it's called, separate property. The property I bring into the estate is my own property. Now, the problem that comes is when I add Charlotte to it, how much is mine, how much is hers, even though it was mine to begin with. So we have, let's see. Under Texas law, the default rule says that when one spouse dies, the surviving spouse keeps half of the community property and has no right into the deceased separate property. That's I tell you, man. So when one spouse dies, the surviving spouse keeps half of, you can't say they're joint, it's not joint, it's literally community property, but the property they co-own. But she has no right, or he has no right, into the deceased separate property. Most states allow a surviving spouse to claim what is called an elective share, typically 1/3 or 1/2 of an estate. And this is what I tell people all the time who don't even have a will. I said, you recognize a lot of states, the death, unless you explicitly leave in a transfer of death, payable in death, or beneficiary designations, if you have no will, half could go to your surviving spouse, but the other half could go to the kids. It depends on what your county says, your state says. It's all, so if you just say, I don't need a will, I don't have much, I'll leave everything to Charlotte. If you don't state it specifically, theoretically, it could go to the kids, even if it's just a regular marriage, and only half could go to my surviving spouse. It's the wrong answer. Don't do that. Marriage automatically gives surviving spouse legal protections in addition to property rights that should be addressed when they're talking about prenups. Here's Patricia Schultz. She was 50 when she got remarried to a guy named Donald. She had 3 previous children, and he had 5. In their first estate plan, they left 100% to each other. But then Schultz's father told Patricia Schultz, told her that he was leaving them a nest egg from the sale of his construction business, but he wanted to go down to his bloodline, not old Donald's. So she had to set up a trust to do that, which only makes sense, dude. It's not an easy conversation to have with my husband. Sure it is. You say, look, man, Donald, I'm going to do what I can, but my dad is selling his construction business. He's leaving the proceeds to me, but he wants it all to go to my children. Now, if Donald gets pissy about that, time to say, put on your walking shoes. I tell you, baby, I ain't. You're a fool. I'm stepping out in my walking shoes. Choose executors and trustees carefully. Could not agree more with that. Let's see, I always ask, who's the executor of your will or executrix if it's a woman? Who is this person? Do they know what they're doing? Are they competent? Are they older than you? Like if it's Uncle Bob who's already got Alzheimer's, do you want that guy managing your estate? Or if it's a trust that they set up. A lot of people set up a trust that think it's all good to go. Who's the successor trustee? We have to have these conversations. Do they know who they are? Do they know they've been named this? Do they know what that pain in the butt is going to be to do this? Because it could be, especially in a complex estate, especially with children who are kind of at each other's throats. There's no joke, man. And I always say, so who is the executor? Who's going to be the successor trustee? Do these people know are they local? Are they sitting in California and you're in freaking Miami? I mean, how are they going to manage the estate? Do you have multiple residents in multiple jurisdictions? Think about this stuff. This is a big flipping deal. And all these people say, I don't need an estate plan because I don't have to worry about estate tax. This has nothing to do with estate tax, nothing. This has to do with who's going to manage the estate upon your demise or incapacity. And if you don't have this, the county has an estate plan. It's called intestate. That's the plan, the will, essentially, the estate plan that you have for people who don't have wills, intestate. Don't do that. I say 95% of the people I ding probably 90 to 95% of my clients, two things: not having an umbrella insurance policy and no estate plan in order. It's crazy. And I just don't let that be. All right, love your thoughts. God bless. And we'll see you.